Welcome to Max's Football Playbook. Today we're going to be continuing doing our off-season rebuilds, and today we're doing the Arizona Cardinals. Their biggest needs are the offensive line, edge position, wide receiver, cornerback, and quarterback if you want to move off of Kyler. So let's get into it. Starting with cut candidates, we're going to cut James Conner as he's an older player who got a pretty bad injury, and I think it's time to move off of him, especially as you have younger guys who are ready to get a chance. Here at cornerback, we're also going to cut Sean Murphy-Bunting. I think he's worth cutting because he's had multiple injury issues as of late. Next up, we're also going to cut Bilal Nichols. He got hurt last season, and so he didn't play much. And when he did play in those 4 games, he didn't look that great. So I think it's worth cutting him and getting some production somewhere else. Then after Bilal Nichols, we're going to cut Evan Brown. As this does say, it doesn't match the 6.5 cap million hit. So we're also going to do that too. We're going to cut him. And finally, we're going to cut Dalvin Tomlinson because he's an older vet. And we're trying to rebuild here, and he does save us a good $14 million with the post-June cut. Now let's get into our re-signings. First off, with our RFA tenders, we're going to bring back Chad Ryland because he's a good kicker. The other guys I don't think are worth $3.5 million, so we're just going to bring back Chad as our kicker. So let's get into our re-signings and start with the running back position because there's no quarterback free agent. At running back, we're going to let Zonovan Knight go and DeMarcado go, but we're going to bring back Michael Carter because he's worth the price, and we do need some running back depth. Here we'll pay him $2.1 million for 3 years. He accepts. Perfect. Next up at wide receiver, I want to bring back Greg Dortch because he could be a good wide receiver 4 for you. We're going to let Simi go because we can find someone who replaces him for cheaper in the NFL draft. With Zay Jones, I do want to bring him back because he's a good veteran with a somewhat younger wide receiver core. Getting into our tight end, I think we just got to re-sign one of these guys. We're going to re-sign Travis as he's the cheapest one, and we're going to let these other 2 guys go so we can try to focus on positions that are more of need. Now, at offensive tackle, I definitely want to re-sign Will Hernandez. Unfortunately for him, he did get injured, so we're going to sign a 1-year prove-it deal here for $3 million, just so we can have the flexibility to move off of him if we need to, and if he does seem to play better, we can re-sign him next offseason. Going based off real reports, it's not likely that Jonah Williams will resign, but don't worry guys, we're going to have some replacements later in this video. We're going to let back, and with Calvin, we're going to let him go because he's an older player, and we're going to spend that money to get 2 replacements. At edge, even though LJ Collier would help a position of need, we're going to let him go as he's an older player, and we're going to look to maybe draft someone or sign a young player who could help out with that group. We're going to re-sign PJ Mustard as he is an exclusive rights free agent, but we're going to let go of Justin Jones. However, we are definitely going to bring back Calais Campbell. 1 more year, $10 million. He was pretty productive last year, and he's still a great veteran who I think a team that needs defensive line help would definitely use. At linebacker, we're going to let J.J. Russell go. However, we're going to re-sign Channing Tindall because he's a good linebacker who could be helpful in the future. At cornerback, we're going to let go of Darren Hall. However, we are going to re-sign Sterling Thomas. And finally, at safety, I definitely think we got to bring back Jalen Thompson, and his estimated value is somewhere around $12 million. So we'll bring him back here on a 3-year deal. And now that we wrapped up our potential re-signings, let's get into our one and only trade of this video. We're going to be trading Kyler Murray to the New York Jets for a 4th round pick 103 in this draft. We're going to be trading Kyler here because I think it's time to move on. He does have injury issues, and this team already wants to move on. It also does save us a good amount of cap, which can help us build around the rest of the team. And the Jets would do this because from Aaron Glenn's perspective, he's really got to start winning, otherwise he'll probably be fired. So this is kind of a win now move. And for the Jets, I don't know if they're ready to draft a quarterback, and it's kind of hard for them to really get a quarterback. So maybe you just keep Kyler for a few years, and then once you think the team's ready, maybe next year you draft a quarterback. So as you can see, after that trade, we have $78.4 million, which is a ton of money to spend. And don't worry, this is going to be a really fun offseason plan. We're going to be signing a lot of big-name players who could make this team really good next year. So let's start at offensive line. A guy that I want to bring in to this team is Braden Smith. We're going to sign Smith for $15 million for 3 years. The reason why I would like to sign Braden Smith to this team is because he's a consistent player who is also a good run and blocking guard. And I have a draft pick that might shock some of you guys. I think he could be really beneficial to a draft pick that I have in mind for later in this video. So that right there is our Jonah Williams replacement. And now let's get into our second offensive lineman we're going to sign. Second offensive lineman we're going to sign is Wyatt Teller to a 2-year, $6.9 million a year. The reason why we would also sign Teller is because he's a good run and blocking guard, and I think their new head coach, Mike LaFleur, would love to establish the run game, and that's exactly what he would help you with. Another guy who I would like this team to sign in the offseason would be quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo would make sense as another veteran backup quarterback in case Brissett gets hurt, and a thing I like about Garoppolo is that he's familiar with the Mike LaFleur offensive system, and he has chemistry with him already. So I think that would be a nice player that LaFleur would love to sign. Now let's get into the defensive pieces that I would like them to sign in free agency. Starting with Boye Mafe of the Seahawks. This team, of course, needs edge. This is a younger edge who could definitely help this team right away. A contract for him would probably be like 3 years, $39 million. So let's do something around that range. Another way to continue building up in that front seven would be to get middle linebacker Nakobe Dean. Dean is a guy who often experiences some injury issues. I think he's a great leader, and when he's on the field, he could be really impactful for this Cardinal team. So a younger player, which also fits the timeline. So let's sign him here for 2 years. Going from one Dean to another Dean, go and get cornerback Jamal Dean from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dean is a great starting boundary cornerback who doesn't need much safety help, and for a team that could definitely use some cornerbacks, this would be a smart deal to make. His value would probably be somewhere around 3 years, $36 million, so that's what we're going to do. Let's continue building up in the secondary by getting Alontae Taylor. Taylor is a guy who plays physical. He's also experienced, which is some good stuff that you want for this cornerback room. He can also be your nickel cornerback. His value would be somewhere around 3 years, $11 million, so that's what we'll pay him here. Finally, with our final free agent signing, we're going to sign Daquan Jones. The reason why I'm going to sign Jones is because we did let Tomlinson go, who is obviously an older player who wasn't crazy productive, and we did get a good amount of money back for him. And we did also cut Bilal Nichols because of the injury concerns, and that when he did play, he didn't play amazing. So who's a guy who's productive and is still kind of a veteran, kind of mixing in between both of those players? That's Daquan Jones. Jones would probably be worth like $5.1 million. And now, with our free agency signings done, let's get into the NFL draft. At pick 3 here, we have the choice between Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Love. Obviously, there's some other players like David Bailey, Carnell Tate, and Spencer Fano. However, looking at the trade offers, I do like this trade from the Tennessee Titans to get pick 4 and 66, so we're going to do that. They get Arvell Reese, which I'm okay with because, honestly, that wasn't my plan either way. How about we do a shocking pick and take my best player in this NFL draft, Jeremiah Love. The reason why I think the Cardinals could take Jeremiah Love is because they could definitely use an upgrade at running back. Of course, they have Trey Benson, who's a younger guy, but he did deal with some injuries last year. And I think in their spot, they can afford to get someone who's best available. Mike LaFleur also loves to run the football, so I think this would be a great fit. Reason why I love Jeremiah Love is because he's a home run hitter. He's also a workhorse running back, of course. But the really cool thing about him is that he's one of the best pass catching backs, which is really valuable in this system. And it really fits the current NFL passing style offense that most teams use. For the rest of the draft, let's try to target an offensive lineman, an edge, a quarterback, a slot wide receiver, and a backup tight end and cornerback. Here, looking at the board, I feel like we've drafted this guy a good amount. However, I believe that Emmanuel Pregnon is a top 35 player. And because we did sign Braden Smith, and we have veterans like Wyatt Teller, and we also did re-sign Will Hernandez. Teller and Hernandez are both guards who are obviously older, So I think a guy who you can kind of mentor and have replace him eventually would be Emmanuel Pregnon. And of course, I think Pregnon maybe has the ability to start over Will Hernandez even from day one. Of course, this team does need a defensive end, so let's try to address that here. And looking at the board, there's not a ton of extremely appealing guys here. However, the choice would probably for me be between Malachi Lawrence, who's obviously a raw player, but at the combine, he did really show he's absolutely physically gifted. So there's a reason for the Cardinals to take him. But I'm going to take LT Overton. Overton seems like a slightly more safer player. And for a team that needs edge right away, I think it's better for them to take him. Now that we took in a running back, an offensive lineman, and an edge, let's try to get maybe a young developmental quarterback or a slot wide receiver. So here, let's start off with addressing the slot wide receiver position with Antonio Williams. We're going to take Williams here over Elijah Surratt because Antonio Williams is specifically mainly a slot guy, and Surratt is not exactly that. However, I will give credit to Surratt. He is a good player and a player who definitely is really smart and could contribute to this Cardinals team. But Antonio Williams is a better fit for this Cardinals team, and I think he would work well with Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson. Now let's get our development of quarterback. Looking at the QB board here, there are some guys who have a decent amount of potential, like Taylon Green. However, he's a big project, but he did show at the combine he has the physical tools you need. However, here I'm going to take Drew Aller, and unfortunately for Aller, he's going to fall in this situation because even though in real life he's probably going to be a third-round pick because someone's going to value his physical traits and his experience, he did get injured October 11th, which meant he did miss a lot of the Penn State season, and he just recently got back throwing in front of scouts at the combine. So let's get Drew Aller at a discount here than what he probably would be. Looking at the board here, there's a player that I really do like, and I did say I want a backup cornerback. Dalen Everett ran really fast at the combine. He had one of the best 40 times for a cornerback. And of course, he's a Georgia player, so most Georgia players are really smart, and I think he would be a great fit for this team where he doesn't have to start right away, but you can use his physical traits to eventually become a starter for this team. At pick 141, I did also say I want a backup tight end. So here we're going to go Eli Rarden. Rarden, to me, has the potential to be a really good player, but unfortunately for him, he tore his ACL twice in like the last year. I don't know how that happens. It's just unfortunate. That's why he's going to fall here. However, to me, I think he's a top 100 player in this class, so I think it's good value you're getting here. With our last two picks, pick 182 and our late 7th round pick, let's try to stack up on that edge room and maybe get another guy in the offensive line. Here, this team obviously does need edge, and a guy who's a really good pass rusher and who was very productive last year for Western Michigan is Nadeem Tucker. Tucker is definitely slightly better than this. As you can see, the board had him at 148. So I think you're getting good value for a team that definitely needs pass rush here. Looking at the board here with their final pick, I do see a guy who is definitely ranked a lot lower than he probably should be. To me, Caleb Elarms is probably a 4th round pick, and he definitely showed that at the combine. So I think he has the physical traits that you would like here and you would like to take at this position. Of course, he also is an outside linebacker and a middle linebacker. He can play a little bit of both for you. So he can definitely still help out that edge room while supporting that middle linebacker group. Hey, would you look at that? We got an A- off-season grade. So this website does like what we did. To recap, you guys can see all of this. And this is what the updated depth chart would look like after this offseason plan. Obviously, Garoppolo would probably be ahead of Slovis. Jeremiah Love would be your running back 1. And Antonio Williams would be your wide receiver 3. Finally, here are the moves that we did in the offseason. We cut James Conner, cut all of these guys. Of course, we did do the Kyler Murray trade. And don't worry, I do think the Cardinals will see what they can get out of Drew Aller in this situation. And if it doesn't work, they'll probably be back up here with a good high pick next year, where you could finally get your new quarterback. Finally, with our signings and our re-signings, you can see we did sign all of these guys. And a quick recap of our draft. Pick 4, we took Jeremiah Love. Then we went Pregnon, Overton, Williams, Aller, Everett, Rardon, Tucker, and we ended off with Caleb Alarms. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you guys like this video. And don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, see you guys.